Hello, and welcome to AFSPA Live, our monthly digital broadcast designed to give AFSPA members and eligible federal employees a place to ask questions and get answers about past AFSPA Talks topics, their benefits, and wellness needs. You can ask your question through the chat box on whichever social media platform you're streaming AFSPA Live, YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn. If you're not able to join us live, call our toll-free line prior to the broadcast at 888-435-0757 and leave our team a voice message that we may play back and answer live on air. Just tell us who you are and the question you'd like us to answer. I'll see you at the next AFSPA Live. You'd like us to answer.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to AFSPA Live, a live video broadcast Q&A session that we stream every last Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. My name is Maddie Norton. I'm a communication coordinator at AFSPA, and we are discussing Medicare today, a live video broadcast, and how it works with the Foreign Service Benefit Plan. Joining us today is AFSPA CEO Kyle Longton. I'm a communication coordinator at AFSPA.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are anticipating this may be a bit longer than our typical half hour today, given interest, but we hope to answer as many questions as we can. And Maddie has graciously agreed to let me give a quick disclaimer here at the top. As she mentioned, our focus today is Medicare and how it works with FSBP. If for some reason you don't have FSBP and you're joining us, but you have another federal employee health benefits program, I can answer generally about that. What I can't do, or what this program is not intended for, is to answer Medicare questions for people other than federal annuitants or those who are employees and looking toward retirement. This is not sort of general interest, general purpose Medicare information. This is really about how Medicare works with federal health plans, and one federal health plan in particular. So with that, I think we had some great questions that we received in advance of today, and Maddie did let me look at them, but she's mixed up the order, so I will leave it to you.
All right. And I think, first of all, Kyle, I know that it's confusing with all the different types of Medicare. So would you like to dive in and kind of talk about what each part is? And
we have a visual aid. So I want to share this, and this comes from the AFSPA Talks podcast that we did earlier in March that I highly recommend the video version of. It's a detailed overview of FEHB and Medicare, how they work together, but this slide comes from that. And it's just a quick overview of the 4 different parts of Medicare. So original Medicare consists of 2 parts. Part A, which is essentially hospital insurance, and for most people, this is free. You paid into this throughout your working career. Part B, also part of original Medicare, is medical insurance. This is what we think of for most other things other than those hospital fees. So doctor's visits, the doctor's services when you're in the hospital, labs, imaging, things like that. This does have a monthly premium. It starts at $174.70 per month. And I should mention that is per person. Those are the 2024 premiums. And this is the standard amount before accounting for your modified adjusted gross income. Your income could push you into a higher premium. We can talk about that if there are questions later. Part C is known as Medicare Advantage, and this is essentially comprehensive coverage. It bundles Part A and Part B, so you do have to be enrolled in Part B to select a Part C plan. And it often includes additional coverage, including things like coverage for vision or hearing aids, which typically are not covered under Medicare. Could also include dental, some wellness programs, things like silver sneakers and things like that. But there may be additional premiums, and sometimes those Medicare Advantage plans have built into them a Part D plan, or sometimes Part D plans are separate. And Part D is the youngest Medicare part, only dating to 2006. And this is prescription drug coverage. And the premiums vary by plan. And those are general overviews. Happy to answer questions about how they coordinate with different with the FSBP and with FEHB generally. But those are just a quick overview of the different parts.
Absolutely. And I know I saw this question quite a lot when I was going through the questions. Everyone wants to know, does any form of Medicare cover the fantastic massages that FSBP covers?
So generally speaking, no. If you go to Medicare's website and do a search for massage therapy, they do have a page for it, and it just comes up, and I'm reading from the page right now. Medicare doesn't cover massage therapy. That said, the FSBP Aetna Medicare Advantage program, which we started offering in 2023, does include some coverage for massage therapy. However, under that Medicare Advantage plan, which is optional, you have to opt into it. You must the massages must be deemed medically necessary. So there has to be a doctor's referral, and the massage therapist must participate in Medicare and must participate with that Medicare Advantage plan. And that is very rare because very, very few insurance plans cover massage therapy. And so very few massage therapists participate with any insurance, and certainly don't accept Medicare, except in very rare circumstances. So our Medicare Advantage plan does have a relationship with a group that covers this, but it is not the most robust coverage and access that you might find as just going to a Massage Envy or another provider somewhere. So that is very limited under that Medicare Advantage plan. Otherwise, Medicare does not typically cover massage therapy.
All right. And I am seeing that we have some questions coming in from YouTube. Someone has asked, how does the Medicare limiting charge work when AFSPA doesn't cover a service that Medicare does? And then they clarified without Part B.
So I'm a little confused about the question because if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying you have AFSPA but not Part B, and so you're trying to, but you're saying then that AFSPA doesn't cover a service, but Medicare does cover the service, and I don't know. I'm interested in what kind of service that would be that Medicare covers and AFSPA doesn't. I can see that there would be some that AFSPA would cover and Medicare doesn't. So I'd ask that person, the PSA test. I saw this question ahead of time. We've received this question monthly for several months. Tried to answer it several times. I've tried to answer it by email. I will be happy to do so again. We do cover a PSA test. This is a prostate cancer screening. We cover it per the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommendation, and we cover it as a preventive service for people age, I believe it's now 45, but up to age 69. After that, if a doctor does order the test, or before the age range, we would pay for it, but we would pay for it as a diagnostic test, which means that we would typically cover it at 90% with an in-network provider or overseas provider, rather than the full 100% for a preventive exam. So this was a change that the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force made a few years ago to change the maximum age on that. That was a directive also that came from OPM, that we note that in our coverage of PSA tests. So that is how it's covered. You can still get a PSA test if your doctor orders and performs one. It may only be covered as diagnostic if you are outside of the age range set by the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, which again goes up to a maximum age of 69.
All right. And I saw a lot of questions about what to do with spouses who may be different ages or may not be in Medicare while the main care, like
the enrollee.
Enrollee is. So we got a question that says, I use Medicare and FSBP as my supplemental insurance, but my spouse is not old enough for Medicare. Can my spouse still use the foreign service benefit plan normally?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're enrolled in FSBP and you have Self Plus One or family coverage, then that spouse would still have FSBP coverage as their primary insurance. As would it may not apply to this person, but for others, any children who are covered on your plan. AFSPA, the FSBP, would still be their primary insurance as well. It's secondary for you because you have Medicare. But for those who don't have Medicare, as long as they're covered under FSBP on your plan, that remains their primary payer. No, there's no requirement that they have Medicare because they're not eligible yet, just as you said. So absolutely, we're still there for the whole family.
Perfect. And we got a question similar to the one that we just got from YouTube. Robert has asked, since I already have AFSPA for non-hospital expenses, why would I need anything more than Medicare Part A?
Sure, that's a great question, and it comes up a lot. So if you have Medicare, so you've got Medicare Part A, no premiums, that pays first for your hospital expenses, and then FSBP would pay second, which is perfect. When you come to other expenses, we would pay primary, even if you don't have, as long as you don't have Medicare Part B. But your question essentially is why would you even want Medicare Part B? And the answer there is that with Medicare Part B and Foreign Service Benefit Plan, you are essentially 100% covered. You would have, in that case, we waive our calendar year deductible. We also cover the Medicare calendar year deductible, and we waive the cost sharing as long as you're going to what's known as a participating or non-participating Medicare provider. We opt-out providers are a whole other category. We can talk about that later if the opportunity arises, but essentially you're 100% covered. And so in that case, some people don't mind paying the Medicare Part B premium in addition to what they're paying for the FSBP because it reduces their risk. They know exactly what they're going to pay, and they have very little risk in terms of out-of-pocket costs should they run into additional medical expenses and so forth. So they know exactly what that is. That said, if you don't have Medicare Part B, you still have FSBP, and we still offer the same coverage, but you would be subject to the calendar year deductible, as well as to the cost sharing for those out-of-pocket expenses, such as the 10% for doctor's visits and so forth. So just something to keep in mind. It does provide you additional coverage, additional assurance of what you will pay in a given year. The exception being prescription drugs, because that would still have an out-of-pocket cost.
All right. And we're getting lots of questions in the YouTube chat. Someone has asked, if you have the Foreign Service Benefit Plan and don't take Medicare Part B when eligible, do you have to pay a penalty if you decide to sign up later?
You do. So if you are, when you reach age 65 and you're already retired, that is your opportunity to enroll in Medicare A and B. And people, even if you're still working at age 65, go ahead and enroll in Medicare Part A. There's no reason really not to. You're not paying a premium. It'll be in place. But when it comes to Part B, you do have to enroll when eligible. There's an exception that I'll come to in just a moment. And if you don't, and you decide to enroll later, so let's say you're eligible at age 65, you don't enroll, you're already retired, and then at age 68, you decide that you do want to enroll in Part B, you must pay a penalty, and that penalty is equal to 10% of the premium, an additional 10% on top of the premium, for every 12 months that you were not enrolled in Medicare Part B and could have been. So in that case, 3 years, 30% additional premium, and that penalty is charged it's not one time, it's charged for as long as you are enrolled in Medicare Part B. So it is important that again, if you're already retired and at age 65, that is your opportunity to make that decision. Later on, you would face that penalty. The exception is if at age 65 you are still working, or maybe you're covered on a spouse's insurance and that spouse is still actively working. So you're receiving your insurance through active employment. You can make the decision to delay your decision on Part B until you stop receiving your group health insurance as part of active employment. And then at that point, once you stop receiving, either you retire or your spouse retires, but that insurance becomes sort of a retiree benefit rather than part of active employment, it starts an 8-month special enrollment period during which you can make a decision on Part B without a penalty. There is a form that the employment office must complete, and you'll have to submit to Medicare that confirms you during that time period that you could have had Part B and didn't. You were receiving your benefits, your group health insurance as part of active employment. And you just want to ask them to complete that before the retirement goes through so you can send that in with your application for Medicare Part B.
All right. And I saw this question, and I know it's been asked at annual meeting and a couple other places. One of the great benefits of the Foreign Service Benefit Plan is that it covers you outside of the U.S. Does that occur with any parts of Medicare? Does Medicare cover you if you are not stateside?
Generally speaking, 99.9% of the time, no, it does not. There are very, very limited exceptions where there is some coverage. It's like if you're moving on an overland ambulance from maybe Alaska to the lower 48, if you're a certain distance on a cruise ship, a certain number of hours outside of port, etc. Excuse me. But no, you should assume that if you are outside the United States, including on a cruise ship, Medicare will not cover you. It's right there in your passport, I believe, on page 6, that it does not cover you outside the United States. So if you have Medicare A and or B and Foreign Service Benefit Plan and you're outside the United States and you receive care, your Foreign Service Benefit Plan would pay primary for that care outside the United States.
All right. And Kyle, we're going to jump to one of our longer questions that was submitted.
Okay.
And you may have already answered some parts of it, but I know that this was something one of our members asked, but they said, if I choose Medicare Advantage, do my doctors have to participate in Medicare, or can they just be members of the Aetna network? Second question is also, if I opt out of Part B and later join Medicare Advantage, must I then join Part B and therefore pay the higher premium because I am joining late, which I know you touched on a little bit.
Sure. So I'm going to answer the second one first, because I have to be honest with you. I've got to be a little bit careful, and I didn't tell Maddie this ahead of time, about answering some of the questions on the Medicare Advantage. And so I'm actually pulling up the webpage so I can read exactly what it says, because it's a Medicare plan. And although I'm certified in Medicare, I am not officially licensed on Medicare. So I want to read you exactly what it says about the providers. But I will say that, yes, if you, just to reiterate again, if you opt out of Part B or decide not to enroll, and then you want to join a Medicare Advantage plan later, to join Medicare Advantage, you must be enrolled in Medicare A and B. And so then you would have, you would likely, it's a decision by Medicare, but you would likely then be paying a penalty, 10% for every 12-month period that you could have had Medicare Part B and didn't. And then generally speaking, some doctors are hesitant, skittish, I don't know exactly the right word to use, about Medicare Advantage. The FSBP Aetna Medicare Advantage plan is a little broader than most Medicare Advantage plans. Most Medicare Advantage plans say they work more like an HMO, where they say, here's a network, you can only go to doctors in this network. We have that, but we also allow it's nationwide, and people enrolled in that plan can go to any doctor who accepts Medicare. Now, the doctor's office may say, no, we're not part of this specific network. If that happens, you can call the Aetna Medicare Advantage Service Center, which is on the fsbp.com/retiree website. Find the number there, and ask them to reach out to the provider, let them know what challenge you're running into, so they can make that outreach to the provider and clarify things for them about that. Yes, actually, you do have coverage. They can treat you even though they're not specifically in that Medicare Advantage network.
All right. Let's see. So with that being said, if covered, Timothy has asked, if covered by FSBP / the Medicare Advantage plan, if I'm overseas, does FSBP still cover as primary?
Yeah. If you have the FSBP Aetna Medicare Advantage plan, when you're overseas, there is coverage. However, the Medicare Advantage plan would pay primary, but it only provides coverage for urgent or emergent care. So this is not, we have a number, our population is very mobile. They've spent, in many cases, their career overseas. And so I know a number of people who like to travel to, let's say, a hospital in Bangkok or even South Korea or somewhere else to get an annual physical. They enjoy visiting. They're there maybe on vacation, and they want the annual physical. The FSBP Medicare Advantage plan would not cover that physical that you have done in another country. It would cover if you stepped off a street corner, tripped, fell, and broke your arm. We would cover that, but again, it's for urgent and emergent situations. So it's the plan would pay for that. We've got it taken care of in the background that is covered, it's not the same comprehensive care outside the United States.
Got it. And if you see me looking over to my right, that's because I'm looking at the YouTube chat. And someone has asked, I read that beginning this year, Part D is included automatically at no charge for those enrolled in the Foreign Service Benefit Plan. But a year ago, it required an opt-out, but now requires opt-in, ? Accurate?
No. So we're working. And this program may continue to evolve throughout this year based on member feedback, based on experience, based on continued guidance coming from the Office of Personnel Management, which oversees the entire Federal Employee Health Benefits Program. In fact, right now, there is a carrier conference going on for FEHB carriers, and they have a Part D, what we call a prescription drug plan, or an employee group waiver plan, EGWIP, session this afternoon that we'll be watching closely for some additional guidance. So we did implement, and we've had a lot of questions on this, we did implement a Medicare Part D plan, or the FSBP Express Scripts Medicare Prescription Drug Plan. I'm going to refer to it as PDP, beginning January 1st, 2024. We did let folks know who were eligible for the plan, and that we were doing automatic enrollment. We did a campaign in the fall of last year, and let them know that to avoid ever being in the PDP, they could opt out sometime in November, December of last year. And we had about just shy of 2,000 people who did that in that time, almost 15% of the eligible population. That the automatic enrollment does continue now. That was the agreement that's in our contract with OPM. That is what's outlined in the 2024 brochure, Section 9. So right now it continues. If you are enrolled and you no longer want it, you can go and disenroll. You can go to our website, afspa.org/PDP, prescription drug plan, and toward the bottom of the page is a form you can fill out to disenroll. If you receive notification that you are aging into it, so you're approaching your 65th birthday, you're enrolled in Medicare, or you're retiring, or we've just gotten all that information. I should mention that the retirement paperwork doesn't reach us always super timely. Sometimes it's 2-3 months before we get that information. So once we have all the information to determine that you're eligible for it, which means you're enrolled in a Medicare program, you're receiving your benefits as part of retirement, and you're age 65, we will begin the process of automatically enrolling you, which starts with a notification to you. And that notification right now is coming from Express Scripts. So be on the lookout for that. But you can opt out of the program before you're officially enrolled, because it'll be about usually a 30 to 60-day time period from when you receive that first mailing from Express Scripts until your policy actually becomes effective under the PDP. So it still requires opt-out. It's still auto-enrollment. However, if you have opted out already or disenrolled already, we will not come open season re-enroll you. We will maintain your enrollment status going into next year. You can come back to it at any time if you realize that it is a better, makes better sense for you to be enrolled in the PDP. You do have the option of re-enrolling. And again, you can just go to afspa.org/PDP to re-enroll. There's one button for disenroll, one button for re-enroll. Choose whichever one makes sense for you at the time. But you do have the option of coming back to the plan at any time. There may be a delay in the effective date just based on CMS regulations. So, for instance, if you were to re-enroll today or disenroll, I believe your effective date, don't hold me to this, you'll get a confirmation email, would be May 1st.
All right. And now we're going to jump to a question about retiring. If I can. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to go back to the PDP because I saw a couple questions. We can come back to the retiring, but some people, if they're contacting are being told they're not eligible for the PDP, it may be because they are not receiving their benefits as part of a retirement. So if they're covered under a spouse and the spouse is still working, then that may be the reason they're receiving their health benefits as part of active employment, or maybe also that you may have retired, spouse is retired, and we just haven't received the notification from your employing agency yet. Again, it can take, the best case scenario is we get it within 2 months. That is the fastest we've seen it. But if you're still receiving it through active employment, even if you're the spouse, even if you're eligible and enrolled and so forth, then you would not be eligible for the PDP because you're still receiving your health insurance benefits. And that goes along with the primary payer chart that's also in section 9 of the FSBP brochure and in all FEHB brochures. And Maddie, I see another question came in. I am getting the feed of the questions.
Yeah.
Just also want to mention, while we're on Part D, before we move to something else, there was a question about why opt out of Part D, given that it's included. So there's a couple reasons people might choose to opt out or disenroll of the PDP, the prescription drug plan, Medicare prescription drug plan. The first is that there is, and I think we've got a slide that displays this, there are income-related monthly adjustment amounts, and you can see them there based on your income. So for 2024, it goes back and looks at your tax returns from 2022, and based on that, what your income was reported in 2022. This is your modified adjusted gross income. You could be assessed more by Social Security based on your income for being enrolled in Part D, and you can see there. I should note that if you're $103,000 or below for an individual filer, or $206,000 or below for a joint tax return, again, that's 2022 tax returns, then you would not be paying anything else. FSBP is paying that Part D premium for you, but anything above that, you can see it starts at $12.90 per person per month, and it can go up to as much as $81 per person per month. And so for some people who may only be taking 1 or 2 generic drugs, but would be assessed the Part D IRMA, this may not make sense for them. It may not make financial sense for them to be enrolled. For others, it may be a very, very good deal, because I think we also have a comparison of the cost share between the FSBP, our high option, there we go, and our prescription drug plan. But you can see there, if you're not hitting the IRMA, it can be make a lot of financial sense for you, because you would be paying less in most, if not all, circumstances. I would encourage you, we do have a pricing tool at afspa.org/PDP. On the right-hand side, when you log in, it does, there's an option there to price medications. Go in, you can check your medications if it's something other than a generic. The formularies are not exactly the same. There are no exclusions on the PDP formulary, but it may be that something that is perhaps preferred under the high option falls into the non-preferred category on the PDP. And so you might actually end up paying more. But you can see, particularly if you're on a generic, and we consider it a specialty, a tier 5 or a tier 6, it can bring your costs way down for those 30 or 90-day supplies down to $150 from $200 or $300. So this can be a very good deal for people, make a lot of financial sense. But for others, again, if they're being assessed the IRMA by Social Security, it may not make much sense.
Absolutely.
I will also mention with the PDP, there is a wider network of pharmacies. So with the high option plan, you can only get your maintenance drugs, your 90-day supplies from CVS, Walgreens, or through the Express Scripts home delivery pharmacy. With the PDP, you can get your maintenance drugs, including 90-day supplies, from any participating network pharmacy, which is most major stores except for Kroger-owned stores. They are not part of the network. That includes Harris Teeter here in the Washington metropolitan region. And it also means that if you're on a specialty drug, you can get it from any participating network pharmacy. You no longer have to go through a Credo home delivery for that specialty drug as you do under the high option. So it is a wider network, more options, as well as in many cases lower prices. So, Maddie, thank you very much. I love to hear about the next topic.
Absolutely. That was a great explanation of things. And like Kyle mentioned, and I see some people in the comments saying it's all about your personal situation when it comes to the PDP plan. And please utilize those tools that we have on AFSPA.org/PDP, like Kyle mentioned, because it's going to be the best way to figure out if this is beneficial to you or not. And going on to our next question, someone asked, I reached my Social Security full benefits age in August 2025, but I turned 65 in October of this year. How does this impact my health insurance? Will it replace it? Does it supplement it? Do I need to change my current policy once I start using Medicare?
Okay, so I cannot answer questions about Social Security other than the IRMA. The only thing I would say is that if you decide, here's what I can answer, is that if you decide upon your 65th birthday, which is coming up in October, you do have the opportunity, that is your first opportunity to enroll in Medicare. You've got 7 months around your birthday, 3 months prior to your birth month, October is your birth month, and 3 months after, so going into January of 2025. To enroll in Medicare, that's your initial opportunity. Go ahead and enroll in A. Do the calculations for yourself as to whether or not to enroll in Part B. Now, if you enroll in Part B and start taking Social Security, your Part B premiums would be deducted from your Social Security. If you do not take Social Security right away, you will receive, and I think we saw this question earlier, how does that work? You would receive a bill from Part B, or they actually have an option where you can set it up for direct debit from your bank account. So it would just come out in installments for your Part B premium, whether that's monthly or quarterly. You can check on the Medicare website. So being eligible for Social Security doesn't impact your health insurance necessarily. It's more about whether or not you sign up for Medicare. And in that case, when you're receiving Medicare covered services, Medicare pays primary, your health insurance pays secondary. And then I see, do I need to change my current policy once I start using Medicare? Again, that's a decision for you. If you have FSBP, we pay secondary. We do coordinate. We will pay. There was a question earlier about the Medicare limiting charge, which is usually 15% above the Medicare allowed amount. We would pay up to that. We would waive your annual calendar year deductible. We would waive our cost sharing as well as the Medicare cost sharing. But you may also look around and find out if there are other plans that make more sense for you, or maybe the Medicare Advantage plan makes more sense to you. But that is the question. And I should mention that I am happy to have one-on-one conversations with people as they're making that decision to talk through what makes sense for them, what they should consider. Because I see a question just came in, what would my calculations be to determine if I want it or not? What is your income? So how will that impact your Part B premium? What is your tolerance for risk? How much time are you spending outside the United States? Because if you're receiving a lot of your healthcare outside the United States, Medicare Part B may not make sense for you. And I'll just point you back to our YouTube page. If you're not already on there, go back. It's almost an hour long recording, but I cover all of this in great detail. We've got slides that go along with it. You can see it there, youtube.com/AFSPACares. It's the 2024 FEHB, Medicare and FEHB putting it together. It is general. It's not specific to FSBP, but it does answer a lot of these questions, how to consider for Part B enrollment, what happens if you don't enroll in Part B, and so forth. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that, but and my contact information is there if you would like to if you'd like to contact me directly.
All right. And I'm going to jump back to Part D again. Robin has asked, why be in the PDP plan if you're living primarily overseas?
Good question, and thank you for bringing it up. We did see that in the questions that came in ahead of time, and thank you for that. So, if you are primarily living overseas, you should not be in the Medicare Part D. It does not provide coverage outside the United States. If your primary address is outside the United States, you would not have been enrolled. If we have on file an address in the U.S., then you probably would have been automatically enrolled. But the Part D plan, one of the other requirements that I haven't mentioned besides being 65 in Medicare A and or B and receiving your benefits as part of retirement, is that you also must be you must be resident in the United States. There is coverage, again, sort of urgent or emergent coverage if you're outside the United States under the Part D. But it is very limited. There are some additional filing requirements, and you must submit it separately directly to the prescription drug plan, the PDP, rather than as you would for a typical overseas prescription drug claim under the high option. So if you're outside the United States, you should not have the Part D plan if you're spending most of your time and getting most of your prescriptions outside the U.S.
Right. We're going to jump to a question that I saw was submitted, and it says, when it comes to Medicare, will AFSPA offer premium rebates?
That's a great question. And I'm going to, instead of the word rebates, I'm going to use the word reduction. And so right now we do offer a Part B premium reduction for those who are enrolled in our Medicare Advantage plan. So if you are enrolled in Medicare Advantage, you will see that your Part B premiums are reduced by $75 per month, so up to $900 per year. And it's $75 for every month that you are enrolled in the FSBP Aetna Medicare Advantage plan. That is the only premium reduction we offer right now. We do revisit this question annually. We do that in the context of knowing that a significant portion of our membership who is eligible for Part B decides not to take it, and oftentimes that is because of the costs, and they're qualifying for the income-related monthly adjustment amount for Part B, for that IRMA. So it is something we continue to evaluate and consider. But right now, the only premium reduction we offer is for those who are enrolled in the Medicare Advantage plan.
Got it. All right. Another question that was submitted was, if I have TriCare for Life and Medicare, are there any benefits to having the foreign service benefit plan?
It's a really good question. And I'm going to point you, first of all, for general information, to a podcast we did back in, I believe, 2022, which was about FEHB, and there's a video also. It was about Medicare, TriCare for Life, and FEHB. And our guest was Dr. Christine Hunter, who's a retired Rear Admiral who used to run part of TriCare, I think, in the Pacific, and then was also the chief medical officer for OPM. So she knows these programs inside and out. She talks about her personal decision. She talks about what to consider. And if I remember correctly, she is enrolled in all three. But if you're enrolled in Medicare, if you're enrolled in TriCare for Life, you have to have Medicare A and B. In that case, you're paying for Part B. So the question is, what I'm understanding is, do I really need to be paying for foreign service benefit plan? Am I getting anything out of it that I'm not getting from the other two programs? So it's first of all, I have to say it's a personal decision. In many cases, you may want to consider suspending, not terminating, but suspending your FEHB coverage and just sticking with Medicare and TriCare for Life. A reason that you might want to continue to have all three is if there are certain benefits covered under Foreign Service Benefit Plan that are not covered under Medicare or TriCare for Life. I'll go back to one of the first questions we had, which was about massages. If you're a big utilizer of the massage benefit, TriCare for Life and Medicare are not going to cover that. FSBP will continue to cover that at $75 per visit for up to 50 visits per year for everybody on the plan. Is that enough to justify sticking in all three plans? That's up to you. There may be other things. You may appreciate the prescription coverage under FSBP more than the prescription coverage in TriCare for Life. It may also cause more confusion that you've got three different insurances. But I can tell you that when you are receiving care, typically Medicare is going to pay first. Your FEHB plan will pay second, and TriCare for Life will pay third. And that's just generally how it works. That TriCare is sort of the, I'm sorry, I got that backward. FEHB first. Nope, I had it right the first time. I'm sorry. I'm getting confused with another question I had the other day. So yeah, Medicare is typically going to pay first, then your FEHB, and then TriCare last. And that's just how it is set up, that TriCare is typically the last payer. So happy to talk through that. There's very little I can talk about TriCare, so I'd encourage you to go back and look at that. Also, there's a couple TriCare slides in the video I made earlier this month. I'd encourage you to take a look at those. They're in the second half. And there's also a specific link there, I believe, to the podcast, including the one with Dr. Hunter.
All right. We'll probably be wrapping up in the next couple of minutes. So if you have any last minute questions, get those in the chat. Otherwise, we have multiple podcast episodes about Medicare. Like Kyle mentioned, we just uploaded the Medicare and the FEHB and how it works, putting it all together. Please go check out that video on YouTube. Kyle goes into great depth, and I know that's because I edited it and watched it. So if you have any follow-up questions, that's a great place to go, as well as one of our many podcast episodes that we've done with either Express Scripts for the PDP plan or the Medicare Advantage plan. We've definitely covered episodes about that. Or any of our past AFSPA Lives as well. Those are all available on our YouTube page, and you can watch those at any time. Kyle, any follow-up statements, questions?
No, I will just say that we do try to update that Medicare video annually, because there are occasionally small changes, and we did add information about the new Part D plans. It's general in that video, but we did a podcast and an accompanying video last week with frequently asked questions about the FSBP Express Scripts Medicare Prescription Drug Plan. That's a good place to go. We've also got links on that one back to the original podcast and a live Q&A we did back in November for AFSPA Live. So a lot of resources out there if you have questions. But I really appreciate the questions we received ahead of time, the live engagement we've had today. This really makes it worth it for us and makes it a lot more enjoyable when we've got a lot of questions. You may not always like the answers, and I saw that in some of the responses we received, but we're doing our best to answer the questions. And for those who didn't, we will try to get back to you in the meantime. But otherwise, thank you very much, Maddie. Thank you. And thanks to our team behind the scenes.
Yes. And we will see you next month at the very last Thursday of the month. And you can find us at AFSPA Cares on almost every social media platform. So follow us there to keep up to date. Otherwise, have a great Thursday.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
For watching our broadcast. Join us again the last Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, don't forget to look for AFSPA Cares on all of our social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.